What happens when a Hollywood icon walks onto a daytime talk show expecting a relaxed conversation, only to find the spotlight turning into an interrogation? That morning didn't just deliver an interview. It delivered a moment, a clash of expectations. A reminder that sometimes the person you think you've cornered is the very one who flips the entire narrative. Because when Robert Downey Jr. stepped onto The View, one host appeared ready to challenge him head-on. She seemed confident, prepared, certain she controlled the direction of the conversation. But what unfolded next? No one saw it coming. Before we continue, think about this. Have you ever watched a celebrity completely dismantle a hostile interview without raising their voice? Stay with me, because this story builds to a moment you won't forget. The studio buzzed with excitement as Robert walked in. Applause echoed through the room. Fans were thrilled to see the man behind Iron Man in person. He smiled, waved, and carried himself with effortless charm as he took his seat at the table. The other hosts, Whoopi Goldberg, Sarah Haynes, and Alyssa Farah Griffin, greeted him warmly. The energy felt welcoming. But across the table, Joy Behar had a different expression. There was a subtle smirk, a look that hinted this wouldn't be a typical lighthearted exchange. Well, she began as the applause faded. Look who decided to join us. Robert Downey Jr., the man who thinks he can do no wrong. The atmosphere shifted instantly. Robert's smile paused for just a second before he leaned back calmly. "Good morning, Joy," he replied smoothly. "That's quite the introduction. Are we skipping straight to the tough questions today?" A ripple of uneasy laughter spread through the audience. Something was brewing. Joy leaned forward. "This isn't just about promoting your latest project, is it? This is about damage control." And then the questions came, direct and unfiltered. His arrests, his time in prison, his struggles with addiction. "Do you really think you're the right role model for children?" she pressed. You could feel the tension in the air. The other hosts exchanged cautious glances. The studio, once buzzing, had fallen into near silence. "You've made serious mistakes," Joy continued. "Why should parents want their kids looking up to you?" Now the room wasn't just quiet. It was waiting to see whether Robert would react or respond. He didn't flinch. No visible frustration. No defensive tone. Just composure. He took a slow breath, fingers lightly tapping the armrest. "Joy," he began evenly, "I think there may be a misunderstanding about the conversation we're having." He explained that he expected to talk about his current work, perhaps share a few laughs with viewers. But the direction had clearly shifted. Joy pressed harder. "You can't pretend your past didn't happen. Multiple arrests, prison, addiction that nearly destroyed your career, and now you want to move on because you've made successful films?" The studio felt frozen in place. Robert nodded thoughtfully, as if weighing not just her words, but the intent behind them. "I see what's happening here," he said quietly, locking eyes with her. "You've decided this will be a gotcha moment." The intensity in his voice wasn't loud, but it was undeniable. "You think revisiting someone's lowest points, their struggles, their failures, makes for good television?" Joy began to interject, but Robert gently raised his hand, maintaining a calm authority that silenced the room. "My past isn't hidden," he continued. "It's public. I've acknowledged it. I've taken responsibility for it. I don't deny it, and I certainly don't glorify it." A pause. "But if we're talking about being a role model," he added, "shouldn't we also talk about growth, about accountability, about what it means to fall and then stand back up?" The audience stirred, because suddenly this wasn't about scandal anymore. It was about redemption. "Yes, I struggled," he said. "Yes, I made mistakes, and I paid for them. But if we only allow perfect people to inspire us, we won't have many heroes left." A murmur of agreement began building into applause. The dynamic had changed. What was meant to corner him had become his platform. What was meant to expose weakness had revealed resilience. The tension that once filled the room slowly dissolved, replaced by something else, respect. And whether viewers agreed with him or not, one thing was undeniable. He handled the moment with control, clarity, and composure. Live television is unpredictable. That's what makes it powerful. In a matter of minutes, the narrative can flip. The interviewer can lose the upper hand. The guest can redefine the conversation. That morning served as a reminder of something simple but powerful. A person's past may shape them, but it doesn't have to define them. So now I'll ask you, was the questioning fair? Or did Robert Downey Jr. prove that growth deserves acknowledgement? Let me know what you think. And if you enjoy breakdowns of unforgettable live TV moments, make sure you stay tuned, because sometimes the most powerful comeback isn't loud at all. It's controlled. No, let me finish. The words weren't loud. They didn't need to be. In that instant, the easygoing Hollywood charm faded. The smile that once disarmed audiences disappeared, replaced by something far more commanding presence. Because I think your viewers deserve to understand exactly what kind of conversation you've decided to have today. The air inside the studio felt heavy, thick, every eye fixed on Robert Downey Jr. as his tone sharpened, not with anger, but with precision. You see, Joy, he continued, locking eyes with Joy Behar, what you're doing right now isn't journalism. It's not even entertainment. You're taking someone's darkest chapters and packaging them for a few viral clips, for social media traction. Is that really what this show has become? A murmur rippled faintly through the audience. Joy attempted to reclaim the floor. Now wait just a minute, Robert. These are legitimate questions. You're a public figure. Your past is fair game. Robert gave a small, controlled laugh, one that carried no warmth. Fair game, he echoed, leaning forward slightly, calm, unshaken. Is that what we're calling it now? And then came the pivot. Tell me something, Joy. When was the last time you sat across from someone and deliberately ambushed them with the most painful moments of their life? When did someone's battle with addiction become a segment for ratings? The co-hosts sat frozen. Whoopi Goldberg looked ready to intervene, while Sarah Haynes and Alyssa Farah Griffin watched in stunned silence. This was no longer an interview. It was a reckoning. You want to talk about my arrests? Robert said, his voice steady and commanding. Fine, let's talk about them. He didn't deflect. He didn't deny. Yes, I was arrested. Yes, I struggled with addiction. Yes, I made terrible mistakes. I hurt people I care about. I nearly lost everything. A pause. But here's what you're missing in your rush to embarrass me. Joy's grip tightened around her note cards. Robert, I think you're being overly sensitive. These are reasonable questions. Reasonable, he repeated, eyebrows lifting not in anger, but in disbelief. Let me tell you what makes a question reasonable. And now, the shift was undeniable. A reasonable question would be, how did you turn your life around? Or, what advice would you give someone battling addiction? Or even, how can parents talk to their kids about mistakes and growth? He let the silence stretch. Those are reasonable questions. They serve your audience. They create meaningful dialogue. The words settled heavily across the table. What you've done instead, he continued with surgical clarity, is ask me to relive the worst period of my life for your entertainment. You've taken someone's recovery, something hard-earned, and tried to weaponize it. Then came the line that changed everything. And frankly, Joy, that says far more about you than it does about me. The studio fell into stunned silence. Even the hum of the cameras seemed louder. Joy scrambled to regain control. I think you're being unfair. This show has always been about honest conversations about difficult topics. Robert nodded thoughtfully. Honest conversations about difficult topics, he repeated. That's interesting. He leaned back slightly, voice softening, but somehow cutting deeper. An honest conversation would be discussing how addiction impacts families, how recovery works, how society can better support people trying to rebuild their lives. A beat. But that's not what happened here, is it? You could feel it. The momentum had shifted completely. What happened, he continued calmly, is that you saw an opportunity to score points against someone you thought was vulnerable, and you took it. You thought you could ambush me with my past, make me defensive, make me apologize again for things I've already addressed and made amends for. Joy shifted uncomfortably, glancing toward her co-hosts for support. Robert, I think you're mischaracterizing my approach, she said carefully. I'm trying to have a candid discussion. A candid discussion? He repeated, almost gently now. Then he leaned forward once more. Joy, let me ask you something. And in that suspended moment, when the entire studio seemed to stop breathing, it was clear. This was no longer about the past. It was about accountability, and the conversation was far from over. How many other guests have you treated this way? The question didn't explode across the studio. It landed heavy and deliberate. How many people walked onto this stage expecting a professional conversation, only to be blindsided by their most painful memories? The cameras caught every flicker of emotion on Joy Behar's face. This wasn't the reaction she had anticipated. She had prepared for defensiveness, maybe discomfort, perhaps even an apology. Instead, she was facing someone dismantling her strategy piece by piece. And he wasn't raising his voice. Let's talk about the hypocrisy here. Robert Downey Jr. continued, his tone gaining quiet authority. You sit here every day speaking about compassion, about second chances, about treating addiction as a health crisis, not a moral failure." He paused, scanning the table. But the moment someone who has actually lived through that journey sits across from you, that compassion vanishes. Joy attempted to interrupt again. Robert didn't allow the rhythm to break. "You've taken everything you claim to believe about recovery and redemption," he said, "and set it aside because you thought humiliating me would make better television." Silence. Not awkward silence. Stunned silence. The co-hosts sat motionless. Whoopi Goldberg looked contemplative, while Sarah Haynes and Alyssa Farah Griffin watched with wide-eyed focus. This was no longer about celebrity controversy. It was about principle. "But you know what's truly disappointing, Joy?" Robert's voice softened, not with anger, but with genuine regret. "You had an opportunity." He leaned forward slightly. "You could have asked about the work I do supporting addiction recovery programs, the mentorship initiatives I'm involved in, the second chance efforts that help people rebuild their lives after hitting rock bottom. A beat. We could have had a conversation that actually helped someone watching at home." Joy opened her mouth, searching for footing. Robert leaned back, composed, assured. "Instead," he continued, "you chose to weaponize my recovery. And that's not just unprofessional, it's harmful." The audience shifted forward in their seats. "Because when you treat someone's addiction as ammunition," he said calmly, "you reinforce the very stigma that keeps people from asking for help." That line hung in the air. What began as tension had transformed into something else entirely, a live, unscripted lesson in accountability. Finally, Joy spoke again, her voice noticeably smaller. "Robert, I think there may have been a misunderstanding about the tone I intended." His smile was polite, controlled. "Oh, I don't think there was any misunderstanding," he replied evenly. "You were clear. You wanted a moment, a takedown, something that would trend." The audience barely moved. "The problem," he added, "is that you chose the wrong target and the wrong approach." He stood smoothly, adjusting his jacket with practiced ease. And in that moment, he wasn't defined by past mistakes. He was the seasoned professional, the box office powerhouse, the man who had shaped an era of cinema. But more importantly, he was someone who had rebuilt. "You see," he continued, voice steady and firm, "I've already been where you're trying to drag me today. I've hit rock bottom. I've faced consequences, and I've done the work to change." His eyes locked with hers. "I've learned. I've grown, and I've learned how to handle people who try to use my past against me." Joy shifted in her seat, visibly unsettled. "Robert, this was meant to be a straightforward interview," she insisted. "Straightforward?" he echoed, almost amused. Then came the final turn. "Here's a tip for future interviews," he said calmly. "If you're going to ambush someone on live television, make sure you're prepared for them to respond, and make sure you're ready if they do it better." The cameras captured every second, every expression, every shift in power, and what was meant to be a tense celebrity confrontation had become something far more powerful, a moment that would echo long after the credits rolled. Because sometimes the strongest comeback isn't loud, it's controlled. And this time, control changed everything. "Here's what I've learned," he said, his voice steady, controlled, but unshakably firm. "In my years in this industry, in my years of recovery, in my years rebuilding my life and reputation, I've noticed something." The room was silent. The people who try hardest to tear others down, who see someone's past struggles as weakness, are often the ones most afraid of their own lives being examined too closely. The implication didn't need explanation. Across the table, Joy Behar's expression changed instantly. The weight of the moment was unmistakable. No shouting, no accusations spelled out. But everyone in that studio understood exactly what was being suggested. "So before you attack someone's recovery," Robert Downey Jr. continued, "before you shame them for mistakes they've already owned, before you try to weaponize their honesty," he paused. "Ask yourself what that says about you as a person and as a professional." Then something shifted. Robert turned away from the table and faced the camera directly, speaking not to the host, but to millions watching at home. To anyone struggling with addiction, to anyone who's made mistakes, to anyone trying to rebuild their life. His voice softened, but it carried across the studio with undeniable strength. Your past does not define you. Your recovery matters. Your growth matters. Your second chance matters. And don't ever let anyone convince you otherwise. A ripple moved through the audience. This was no longer a confrontation. It was a message. He turned back toward Joy, that familiar smile returning polished, professional, but edged with unmistakable confidence. "Joy, he said evenly. "It's been enlightening speaking with you today. I think your viewers learned a great deal, not just about redemption, but about the difference between talking about it and living it. You could feel it. The power dynamic had completely reversed. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to demonstrate that difference." For a heartbeat, the room was frozen. And then applause. Not polite, scheduled talk show applause. Real applause. The kind that builds from instinct. Joy remained seated, visibly stunned. The co-hosts watched in a mix of shock and admiration as Robert rose smoothly, adjusting his jacket with effortless composure. This wasn't just the star of a blockbuster franchise walking off stage. This was someone who had faced his past and refused to be defined by it. As he reached the edge of the set, he paused, turning back one final time. "Oh, and Joy," he added calmly, "next time you want a candid discussion about difficult topics, make sure you're prepared for the conversation to go both ways." And with that, he exited. The applause followed him. The cameras faded to commercial. But everyone in that studio and everyone watching at home knew they had just witnessed a rare live television moment. Not loud, not chaotic, controlled, calculated, unforgettable. So what do you think? Did Robert Downey Jr. deliver one of the most composed responses to a hostile interview we've seen on daytime television? Or was this confrontation bound to happen? Share your thoughts below. And if you enjoy deep dives into unforgettable on-air moments, make sure you subscribe, because sometimes the most powerful victories don't come from shouting. They come from standing firm.